Godzilla, King of the Monsters. I want to bring up Richard Dorton, who was in the video game God of War, and as well as Godzilla, King of the Monster, he plays the left head of King Ghidorah. Next, I want to bring up Jason Liles. Godzilla, yes, he is the center head, but he played George in Rampage. And lastly, we have Alan Maxson, who actually plays in the Godzilla movie, and he is the left head? Right head. He is the right head. And my notes are sticking together. But, he's also a director, writer, and producer, most notably of the Christmas with Cookie series. So if there's any fans out there for that, we can take questions on that as well. So I'm going to start off with a few questions, then I'll open up to the audience. But basically, for all you gentlemen, what is the process like now as an actor to create a motion capture character as opposed to wearing the makeup? Is it a more liberating experience? Do you work harder with the director, or do you work harder with the technical crew?
Does everybody in here understand what motion capture is? If you don't understand it, raise your hand. Okay, cool. So I'll explain it real quick. Hey, we put on really tight suits with these little markers all over the suits, and we stand in a room that is flooded with infrared light. The light bounces off of our markers and goes back into the camera and goes into the computers. So if I do this, then Godzilla or the Predator or Colossus, whatever, also does this in the computer. And whatever I do, the character does. And then they tweak it the way they want it, and then they add it into the movie. So that's what motion capture is about. To answer the question, it lets incredible creations by the producers and the artists come to life with the reality of emotion and the reality of mass from the actors that are specially trained, like Jason and all of us up here. We're trained to communicate emotions and motion through these characters. And you have to have a little bit of extra special training sometimes. You have to learn how to move like an ape. You talk about that.
Yeah, I mean, I think definitely most of the time, it's all acting. If I was wearing motion capture, if I was just wearing clothes, I would still do George the same. I'd still play King Ghidorah the same. It's always acting. And then it's kind of like, I see motion capture as digital makeup that they put on in post-production, basically. And so, I mean, for George and Rampage, that was 6 months of study and research I did on gorillas, going to the zoo, watching documentaries, studying Terry Notary's work, Andy Serkis's work. If you don't know who they are, Google them, and you'll be like, oh my gosh, I've seen them in everything. And then getting trained by Terry Notary, who is King Kong in Kong Skull Island. He trained everybody on Planet of the Apes. And so that's a situation where I had to take on something physically and vocally and mentally that was different from a human. But then it's always just acting. It's always acting. It's always working somewhat with the technical crew as far as visual effects, but mainly with the director. And then the visual effects team, they do what they do. They might tell me something technically about, like, oh, you're out of line of one of the cameras. But they set up. They do an incredible job, and I think we would agree without the practical makeup artists, without the visual effects artists, we would just be some guys running around looking really, really goofy. And we do the best we can, but they do, like Weta, and for Godzilla, a moving picture company, Guillermo Sharon, who won an Oscar for Life of Pi. He did Godzilla 2014. He's doing this one. Those artists make us not look so ridiculous. So they get a ton of that credit.
No, my career started in the video game industry for motion capture. So I've been doing it for 19 years. I've done over 100 games. So creating those kind of characters, starting in video games where you could capture one person to now where we can capture 15, 20 people at a time in a mocap volume. It literally was, we'd get pictures of what a creature was, and we got the opportunity to work with a director, an animation director, to figure out how this creature moved or how this monster moved. So for starting in the video game industry, it's completely different than the movie industry, except for the cinematics now. you watch a video game cinematic, the storytelling is amazing. You can watch a full movie, if you watch Uncharted, if you watch The Last of Us, you can get real good storytelling. And that's what performance capture has done for us. We've gone from, just being monsters in games to being, viable performers in now feature films and things like that. So it's been an incredible ride to see the technology grow and to grow along with it. And we are the ones who help create movement for these new monsters. It's like mind blowing, to be honest. And somebody says, "Oh, you're going to be Godzilla today, or you're going to be King Ghidorah," and we're like, "Are you kidding me? We're little boys who have, our dreams come true by doing this." So it's been an incredible experience for us in that sense.
Ditto to all of that. No, I don't know what more to say. It's all of that, and it's one of those things where I'd highly recommend watching the behind the scenes on all the DVDs and Blu-rays for things like, Rampage and Godzilla and Planet of the Apes, even Gollum for Lord of the Rings. You all know what Andy Serkis looked like in the motion capture suit, and that's the most famous one, and it's just amazing, like everybody said. And I'd like to reiterate his comment. It's digital makeup. It's exactly like sitting in the makeup chair, because when you do practical monsters, sometimes you're sitting there 8 hours if it's a big full body prosthetic, and the only difference is we don't have to sit there during that, but still a digital artist sits there for more than 8 hours. They sit there for months painting and doing a digital version of physically what's exactly the same, just a different medium. So everybody involved has a ton of talent, and everybody who's on the tech side has a ton of smarts, to know how to do all this. It just takes a lot of work, practice, and everybody who's doing it has been doing it for a long time. So it takes a long time to get there and be able to do it well, the way that we see it in these big movies.
And I will add on to that. You guys, has anybody in here ever cosplayed or enjoyed Halloween and dressing up and all of that? Raise your hand. All right, so you know what you feel like when you put on the suit and you're like, I'm sexy. Look at that. And, well, there's nothing sexy about wearing tight pajamas. There's nothing.
That's what you think.
Nope. There's nothing sexy about wearing tight pajamas. But so when you get into practical makeup, and he's like one of the kings of practical makeup. Practical makeup is when they actually take pieces of latex and rubber and they literally glue it to your face. That's what he's talking about. It takes 8 hours or more, and then they paint it. But the cool thing is when that's on, you're in your costume. You can feel that. Yeah. When these guys are in their pajamas, they're still in the pajamas. We're in pajamas. If I showed you, you'd be like, really? That's what you guys wear? And we're like, yeah, this is kind of it.
You really do actually, to bounce off of his point, is the difference between wearing practical versus motion capture is your imagination. You have to work 10 times harder in motion capture because of when you're in a suit. I've worn suits where it make you 9 feet tall and it weighs 100 pounds. You feel the weight. Yeah. You know what part of you have a tail. You can physically, when you move, you have to wiggle away that your tail moves with you. Whereas when you're in a motion capture suit, you have to pretend that you have claws. You have to pretend you have enormous weight. And that's something that you can't forget the whole time you're performing. You do have to always focus on not losing that. And sometimes you get smacked. I've had before one of these guys say, "Hey, you're breaking character. Get back in," because you forget sometimes. Yeah. You do have to focus on staying in the mindset of your physical appearance, size, weight, everything.
Yeah. Well, when I did Rampage, Terry told me, don't drop character. You're a dude in PJs with 60 dots on your face and dots all over your body, and you walking on sticks. You look ridiculous. Don't, hey, that was fun. Let me check my Instagram real quick. He's like, no, stay gorilla. Don't respond as Jason. And because it helps, because really, if I look at Alan or somebody, we're wearing dots all over our face, we look ridiculous, but I have to remember, no, you're a monster. I have to remember what you're actually going to look like and stay in that place and not, switch in, switch out and stuff. But, did anyone, or do you still as adult, did anyone as a kid, play monsters on the carpet? That's what we get to do. It's ridiculous. That's what we get to do.
But the carpet was lava.
So over the years, I've had a chance to talk to many different people, and in wearing the makeup and such, and creating a character, one of the things that seemed to be unique among them was that they would have this character resurgence. Like they could be at a gas station or in the supermarket and getting angry, and then all of a sudden, many of them have told me, from Brad Dourif to Doug Bradley and so on down the line, that all of a sudden, you know, Pinhead was starting to come up and I had to put him down, kind of thing, or such and such character was coming up. In your experiences, because of the different characters that you had to play, have you been in a social, psychological situation where you've seen one of those characters come rising up?
I was in the supermarket, and they were out of peanut butter, and it was the kind of peanut butter I like, and I had the other peanut butter. I'm like, I don't like this peanut butter, and I was standing like this. And this dude from the other end of the aisle, he's like, did you do Godzilla? I was like, I swear to God. And I'm like, and you don't want to be a dick. You don't want to be like, so I was like, oh, yeah. How did you know? And he's like, dude, I could see it. And I'm like, that's weird. But you get a lot. Do you get it too? There's people who are like, I knew it was you on screen. I could tell by the way you stand. You hear that a lot. And I don't know how I stand. I guess I stand like that sometimes, but occasionally they recognize your movement, and you become known for a certain kind of movement and certain things.
I recognized your movement once.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
like that, and it was awesome. I was rocking it. But yeah, no, sometimes you slide into character because you live with it for so long, and you let it in your body, and you have to really own it. So it helps, especially for like Colossus, who's very upright, and you stand like this. Yeah, 4 or 5 moments. You're living like that for however long. So you walk out of the studio. So yeah, sometimes you take those little body ticks away, and you guys have probably done it too. If you cosplayed, you know after you take the Batman thing off, you go to brush your teeth. Little leftover echoes. So yeah, it happened.
I don't know. With the characters I've played so far, if we're standing up and doing things like that, like Ryuk is like, I don't stand like that ever, and George has got a good, you know. Woohoo! So no one's recognized me for that.
I have.
But actually, George is very much like Terry's methodology with playing an ape is that it's not about what you do, it's what you undo, because we're 97% identical in DNA to chimps. So it's not about like being an ape, but shedding everything that makes me a human. And then I'm down to a core slate foundation where you're just like, that's an ape.
That's
like
my
it
morning.
looks like doing nothing, but like it's so a lot of times it's very meditative. So I like to just a lot of times I'll just sit there and I'll just go soft focus. 'Cause it's really
Are you awake?
relaxing.
Hello? Are you
But
there?
it's very really no. I'm more there when I'm soft focused than when I'm not. Actually, I'm more present. But yeah, I haven't gotten. No one's. Everyone just asked me to like reach something in the supermarket. Literally, like no. Excuse me. Yeah, can you get the for me? I can't reach. I'm like, okay, yeah. I've had one person be like, "You look like the guy who played the gorilla," and it was in the bathroom, and I was like, I'm waiting for you when I get outside. I got to get a picture with you. I didn't want to get a picture in the bathroom. That would have been weird. But he's the one person who's been like, "You look like the guy." I was like, "I am the guy." Oh my gosh, no one says you're the gorilla. That's so cool. I don't get stopped for that, so I don't. Yeah.
Wow. No, I don't want to see that again. I've seen it way too much. I get recognized by a lot of my friends who play video games who will call me and say, "Did you work on that game? Did you work on that game?"
Yeah.
Because they know my walk. They know my hero walk. And they know when you're doing video game stuff, some of it is when you're playing soldiers, when you're playing regular characters, there are specific things that we have to do. Everybody has to walk, they have to run, they have to crouch,
Yes.
you know, and if you're doing specific characters, you're going to move a little bit different. But like hero characters, Nathan Drake, you know, Alex in Silent Hill, I've played those. They're regular humans. So I have a very specific hero walk. Once I know I'm playing the heroic character, that changes. So people will call me and say, "Were you in Red Dead Revolver?" Because I know that walk. That's you. You walk like that. So for me, it's, you know, that kind of work. It was very generic. I can't change the way I walk too much if I'm playing a human. So I get recognized for my walk-in games. No, from the walk-in games, and then first took you long enough. Okay, but I get recognized for just the way I move, you know, in video games right away. That's very, very interesting. I don't think anybody's ever stopped me and said, "Did you, you know?" I don't have that. I'm not as big as these guys either, so there's a different height advantage.
I've recognized you before, Richard. It's true though. What you guys should do is go online and watch everybody's reels, and then watch these movies and video games. Because literally, I have recognized without knowing. Once I was watching Predator, and I was like, "That guy walks like TJ. I bet you he did that." And then when you watch George and Rampage, you see Jason. For sure. Even the movement, I can tell in certain ways that you move. And then I've seen in Silent Hill exactly what Richard was talking about. You can tell it and you go, "Oh yeah." And there's also Left 4 Dead stuff that I've seen before. I'm like, that's clearly him. And there's no doubt in your mind when you watch it. So for fun, you should watch all of our like reels and then go watch whatever we're in, and you'll go, "Oh yeah, it's for sure what they're saying."
Yeah, I guess that's true, because then there's a lot of actors you do recognize. I mean, I can pick out Andy Serkis if he's doing performance capture easily. You just see his eyes, you see how his face moves, or if you're a nerd and obsessed with his work like I am. But
Yeah.
I totally get what you mean, yeah. Because motion capture, it tracks every little thing you do. So you can easily, a lot of times, recognize certain people. It's just like when you recognize an actor in something, even if they're old makeup or something, you're like, "Oh, that's that dude, oh my gosh."
That makes a funny story to talk about recognizing, but not in motion capture with practical. There was one movie, it might have been Christmas with Cookie, I don't recall. There's one of them where I had makeup on, and it looks like me, but more grotesque, I guess. And my wife, she told me, she's like, "I can see what you're gonna look like when you're old, and you're adorable." And I was like, I don't think that was meant to be an insult, but it sounds like one. But it's true, because you can see when I have certain makeup on, you'd be like, "I'm gonna look a little like this," you know? And you can tell, particularly through makeup, unless it's super thick, but you can see certain movements. And I've even heard, my mom has told me before, when I was a character where I was just snarling, and I don't even remember what it was. I might have had one line or something where I say, "Get over here," or something intense before I pull intestines out of the person. And my mom was like, it was scary because it didn't seem like you at all until I heard your voice. And even though in the film it doesn't sound like me, she could hear it just because of the inflections or however the way I would deliver it, she knew it. And so you can pick these little things out if you watch it. And I know most of you probably are huge. Someone's doing... Oh, close to my mouth. I was wondering... I heard sign language or saw sign language over there. But yeah, you guys are all fans of like monster movies and stuff, so I imagine you're like us. When I am a big fan of a particular actor who has played multiple characters under makeup or motion capture, you can tell. You've seen it before with Doug Jones. His movement, you watch it and you go, "I bet you that was Dougie," and then you look it up, and it was. And same with, there's certain things with Andy Serkis, because we've seen so much with him now. Even with his voice, when you hear Snoke, you're like, that was definitely Andy Serkis. And so it's interesting. The general public doesn't always recognize it, but I know people like you guys and us who are fans of non-human things, we know this. We're in tune to it because it's what we love,
Can I ask you guys, what kind of fans do we have in here? Are there any Marvel superhero fans in here? And are there any video game playing fans in here? Nice. And are there DC fans in here? All right. And are there straight up monster movie fans in here? You ain't even gonna put your hand down, are you? All right, that's cool. That's really cool. Thank you. And thanks for supporting us, and thanks for letting us be a part of a great community, which I feel that I grew up in. It shaped me. This community that we're in right now shaped me as a kid. So thank you guys as well.
I was going to say, one of the things that, we teach motion capture too, and one of the things we teach is your skeleton doesn't lie. So when you're honest and when you're acting, for us, our skeleton, we are embodying these characters. So that's why you can recognize this. That's why you can recognize these creature stuff, all the zombie stuff that we put together. It's because we go there, and our skeleton isn't lying. We are committed to our characters and what we create, and that's the beauty of what we do. You know, you get special performances from motion capture that I think that takes us down to the core of our skeleton, and then you just drop an animated character on top of it, but you can see all of us in our work. So that's the beauty of what we do.
Why don't we take a couple of questions from the audience?
Yes, so like I can visualize how this works with like the Predator or George or Godzilla, but I'm really curious about the Ghidra heads. They can't talk about it at all? In fact, we need to limit ourselves to, you can ask them anything, but Warner Brothers has asked them to hold off, and Legendary hold off a little bit on the whole process for the next Godzilla movie, so. Yeah.
Soon, guys. It's almost out.
So, in the original King Kong movie, Kong was just like a armature model. And then as you progress into the 50s and 60s, you have guys inhabiting the suits, like you mentioned on the panel. And today, we have video games and then, you know, the upcoming movie where you guys are basically like the puppeteers for the creatures. Where do you think the technology will progress in like 10, 15, 20 years, and how will they bring the creatures to life then?
Will there always be a man behind the creature?
Hopefully.
Yeah.
I think there's a variety of ways of making entertainment. I mean, you take somebody who has their camera, their iPhone will make their own movie. You're going to find whatever works for you. Big budget, small budget, no budget. You know, there will always be somebody slapping latex on their face with cotton balls still. And then you'll find somebody who has billions of dollars and can build a mocap studio. But also the technology is also moving with VR right now. So there's a lot of live interaction in VR. So you're in a VR headset, there's a guy in a mocap suit playing a creature right in front of you, but because you have the headset on, you don't know what he looks like. You just know that you're interacting with this creature. Yeah. There's an experience called Chained that is out now, where you are basically, they're taking you back to Christmas Carol, but a really scary version, and you are visited by the ghost while you're in the VR headset. So I think technology is going to take us, you know, into the VR world where you're still going to have us performing in front of you. You just won't. You're going to see us as creatures because the technology is so fast with the game engines and things like that. But somebody will miss practical effects. I mean, if you saw The Thing, which is one of my favorite movies with practical effects, then they did the remake of The Thing, and they shot it all with practical effects, and then they went back and they redid it with the digital, and you can see the difference. You know, some of us love the makeup. We love the process of being in 6 hours of makeup too. That's something else that I don't think will ever go away.
And we've seen combos too. There was one thing I did for Microsoft where they put me in full costume, and then they filmed me with 120 cameras. Within seconds, I would step off the stage, and on the screen, it was a 360 digital version of my practical costume. So it is also all coming together, and I think everything's going to keep moving forward. Obviously, there'll be new technology that we probably don't even know yet, but all that's going to keep merging. Because we've also seen recently with, I would say, I don't know what, 5, 6 years ago, there was this huge push for practical looks better. We want more practical. But obviously you can't do everything with it. And you see things like Star Wars where they're combining it. And now it's popular. Who knows? It'll go in waves. Maybe eventually people will get sick of it again because it could be a fad to the untrained eye. Who knows? You know, you'll see waves of things, I think.
I think practical's always, I don't think practical's ever going to go away. There's just a difference when you can tell it's there.
Yeah.
When you can look and you're like, that's not fake, that's there in the room with that other actor, that thing. I don't know how they did it. I think Guillermo del Toro does it best when he does a combination of practical prosthetics and makeup and animatronics and part green screen, especially like something in like in Pan's Labyrinth with Doug Jones playing the Pale Man, how that's a combination of mostly practical, but his legs are partially green screen, so they look thinner than natural. I think that's really great when they do that because you can't tell where the line is because you're like, no, that is real, but what isn't? Yeah. And so I'm always for as much practical as possible, But if you have to do motion capture, then absolutely, yeah. There's just certain things. I think 500-foot tall practical monsters would be difficult. So that's where motion capture is really good.
I think shadow puppets. No, technology is speeding up so much that the computers are getting so powerful that it'll be easier for them to capture the actors. And you want that human interaction, usually with whatever it is that you're dealing with, whether it's a monster or a character. Because a lot of you guys are seeing motion capture often in the movies you're watching, but you probably don't even know that you're watching it. You're not supposed to know. You can barely tell an Alita most of the time, except that her eyes are this big. And then the other characters, you forget that they're not partly cybernetic and real. You just forget after a while. You're just watching the story and watching people. So as that continues forward, I think they're going to go deeper into that. And on your Xbox already, you could do motion capture. If you wanted to, it watches your frame. It watches everything, actually. But it can watch your frame, and they can transfer that onto a character if you wanted it to. It's a very low-grade version, but you can already do it. You can also do it on your iPhone and certain phones with programs. So the technology will increase, and we're going to be there ready to give it what it needs.
I think we'll always need actors. I think there was a visual effects supervisor conference or something a year ago at SAG, and they were talking about it. They had the Oscar winners there from Blade Runner 2049 and how they brought the actors back to life basically. But they're like, that was so hard. You have no idea. You're not in danger of not having jobs. Actors, believe me, it was way too expensive, way too hard. So I think you're always going to need an actor there. And there are certain characters, I won't name any, but there are certain characters when I see them, I'm like, that should have been motion capture, and I can tell it's not. I can tell it's hand animated, and it would have been better if they could have had an actor mixed with the visual effects, because I can tell there's not a live person, a live mind and eyes behind that. I can tell those eyes are animated. There's not real life behind there. So I think an actor mixed with those artists, whether they're practical or visual effects, is always the best way to go. So far, there might be something someone comes up with. Before motion capture came around, everyone was like, well, I don't know what we're going to do. And then Lord of the Rings changed everything.
Well, there's also, to play off of that too, even films like Pixar and fully animated stuff, there is still an actor behind it, because I studied mime for a couple of years, and my mime teacher, he would also take jobs for animated movies like DreamWorks and Pixar. He would work with the computer animators that just sit down with the mouse and keyboard all day and treat them like actors and try to transfer his mime body movement skills into these people sitting at a computer just clicking. And in a way, yes, that's not physically an actor performing it, but he is helping to push them to be as close as he could for that. So even stuff like that has an actor behind it in a sense. So no matter, even if it got to the point where they would never use motion capture, I think stuff like that, it would still be around, of helping people to understand movement and intention for that movement, why you would move like that. And you have to really have someone help you with understanding that, because it's not an everyday thing you'd think of.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point. What was the animated film with Johnny Depp, Rango? Was it? Yeah, Rango. Yeah, they filmed all those scenes live action with actors first as reference. There's behind the scenes on YouTube of Johnny Depp just wearing some average clothes he'd be walking around in, and everybody else, and they're all acting out those scenes, and they have side by side of how they animated it. So there's even actors behind that in a lot of ways.
I think we have time for one or two more questions.
Hi. I don't know if this is a stupid question. Jason, you kind of touched on it. It's a general question. Don't yell at me. I'm fine. So I think you said for Rampage you were on stilts. So you're a billion feet tall, but for big characters, maybe this movie, maybe other movies, are you always on things to make you taller, or is that done digitally? I don't know.
Well, for Rampage, they were arm extensions just for the arms, because gorillas' arms are much, in proportion to their legs, are a lot longer than humans are. And so if I tried to get on all fours as a human, then my butt would be way higher than my shoulders, and it would look very weird. I'd have to be on my knees and on my fists. So those are just arm extensions rather than stilts, I guess. But I call them stilts. Some other people call them stilts. But yeah, but it's kind of different. It's different every time. It just depends on what the character requires. I've been 10 inches higher in some shoe type things before to play characters, and then there's a head above mine because I'm inside of a 100+ pound creature suit. but it just depends each character. It's always different. It's always like, okay, let's see how I can survive in this thing for this project.
So Godzilla is 400 feet tall. So, of course, they gave me stilts that were 389 feet tall. And I did my performance. No. So you just do it on the ground, and you just try to be the right weight and move at the right speed. And then the animators, they blow up your character, or they'll shrink down the city, and they put everything in the right reference frame. And then sometimes, how tall was The Rock compared to George?
Well,
When George got big.
The Rock is always 6'4", but
No, how big was
no,
George?
he gets up to be, the crown of his head's 35 feet, and so I was actually up in a scissor lift 25 feet up, so my eyes, I'd have to hold a tape measure as they rose me up, and I'd be up there for a few hours with like water and snacks so that Dwayne could look up to me and I could act with him from there. Then I would go do those scenes again so I could be on the arm extensions acting out on a motion capture volume, and they would combine that work, and then he would be a little stick with a thing, and I'd look down to him and I'd act it with this stick and have to remember what we did the other day and flip him off and stuff and all that. And so it was a combination of two things there. But I was really high up, which I have some cool shots of like him like trying to get in it, and I'm just like snap, 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 and he's like.
And sometimes when we're in the same scene, but the characters are vastly different sizes, one of us will be standing and the other one will be sitting, although that character is supposed to be standing. So the Predator, the Alpha Predator, and the Predators was 11 feet tall. So anybody he looked at their face like this. So when I turned to look at somebody, and they'd be talking up or reacting up here, and I'd be looking down at their shoulder or something like that. And
For
that
eye
creates
line, yeah.
illusion for the eye lines. So that's what you're doing most of the time, is playing with the eye lines, and it's very mathematical. They'll actually measure everything. If his character, who might be shorter than mine, tries to run away from me, who might be 11 feet tall, I have to run slower because one of my steps takes 3 of his. So I have to go boom, boom. And of course, Godzilla has got to go really slow. Boom. Boom. You're all watching my fingers, aren't you? Wait for it. Boom. So it's like that. You're going really, really slow, and you get that. Does that make sense?
And it's no different with practical either. Like, there's almost all the films you see with practical creatures in it, I'd say half or more of them that I'm in, they'll shoot stuff forced perspective. Do you guys know what forced perspective is? It's like old, 1950s is the obvious type of movies where you'll see, a giant looks really big because they shoot him really close to the camera and the person far back. And I've been in many films where I'll have a suit that's bigger by a foot, but they want me to be, 4 feet taller. So they'll shoot it in a way that looks a little bit bigger, or the angle, they'll shoot upward. Or a lot of times I'll stand on an apple box, or they'll hire the human actors shorter on purpose. So it's no different than practical too. It's just a different way of doing it within the computer versus using tricks of the eye that you can't even tell. A good example for that one that you guys should watch behind the scenes is actually Elf, the Will Ferrell movie, because it's so subtle. Because he's not like a giant. He's not an elf. And when you watch the behind the scenes, there's shots of him sitting in a chair next to an elf, and it's beautifully done. And it's one of the most interesting behind the scenes for a modern day forced perspective film. I really think you guys should watch that if you haven't. It'll put you. And if you imagine that difference in the digital world for motion capture, it's kind of the same thing, just on a different scale.
Well, and the eye line is an interesting thing that I didn't think about. Like for Ryuk and Death Note, they had me sometimes on an apple box, on an apple box, on an apple box, or they had me on apple boxes, which are just boxes, pacing back and forth in the background, so I'm that much taller. Or for George, when he's like 10 feet tall, I'm on all fours, but I'm bent over, so really my head is like 4.5 feet off the ground, and so I had like a helmet with like a pole with a ball on top, and so The Rock he'd be acting with me right here, but he has to look up here because here's where George's eyes are, and so there's a lot of like, Dwayne, no, up there. Oh, sorry, yeah, and otherwise he's looking at like my chest, being like, George, it's okay, and so there's a lot of things you have to, and that's where imagination comes in. You have to, I know a face is here and I'm acting like it's here. It's different every single day, every take, it's always, every day is how are we going to do this? I used to think like we figured it out before, and
I'm going to give you a little something you didn't hear from me, but a movie that all 4 of us are working on or worked on. There was an action figure that we had to look at one point.
That's very true.
I'm just saying. And that's all I'm saying. But that's the eye line. You know, it helped us a lot. And in video games, it's the same thing. I played Pyramid Head, and I'm not as tall as Pyramid Head, but I wore stilts. They on my shoes, they built these wood stilts and just screwed them into my shoes, and that helped me get up a little bit higher to drag the knife. And then we've all done, you know, we've worked on Halo where the elites start out on the ground, and then the next game they're like, hey, let's try those jumping stilts just to get the movement. And then they realize it's hard to keep your balance on those, and then they go back and they create something different. So perspective it changes just depending on the game company too, and the money they have to spend or don't spend. So you either walk on wood blocks for shoes or you get stilts. So it's very, very different.
And what's a lot of fun is when you're blind as the actor on set, and you have to act like you're not blind, and you have to walk a straight line, and you can't see, and your equilibrium is a lot of your balance because you're seeing things, and you're in all this. And so it's each scene with a lot of stuff is like, I'm going to juggle these 4 things and act like they're totally normal while acting in a scene. It's very interesting. It's like a puzzle, having to solve a puzzle.
I want to know, did you have this, because you were blind for a practical character as well, weren't you for Death Note?
No, that was actually amazingly, I was gonna be, and then they cut the face out because since it was gonna be Willem Dafoe's performance portrait. Oh, it was the best. Well, it was very hot, but that breathed. This part of my body breathed.
Got my mistake. He could see.
I've been blind. Why? Why do you ask? Why do you ask?
Because I've had one where I was in a full practical suit where it was a helmet, and for some reason they thought it was smart just to put green screen on the eyes so they could CG it out later. I don't know why they would just not let me see and do it later. But I was also on stilts that were angled like high heels, so I was forced to be hunched forward. And it was a film where I was a monster in the closet, and I was torturing like a little boy. And in little kids' rooms, there's toys all over the floor. And I was on stilts, angled forward, blind. And I had to muscle memory choreograph my footsteps to not step on a toy and fall. And it was one of the most challenging things, but it was awesome because when it's done, you're like, yes! And then you go, whoa.
You're like, yes, I walked from one side of the room to the other. Yes, I'm so good at this.
Only taking like 5 steps is the hardest thing because you have to literally think about the angle, the direction you're moving, how far the step, and you can't do it in a way that you're feeling around for it. You have to do it with intention, like you're ready to grab that kid and eat his face off. And so it's a tough thing to be conscious of all that while the camera looks like you're not cautious of it all, you know. So it's very fun to think about those kind of things.
Yeah, you know somebody's gonna make a meme of you saying you gotta grab that kid and eat his face off. That's the meme. It's gonna pop up.
I hope it does.
A little GIF.
Well, it's interesting. You go to all these acting classes and theater schools, and then you get on set and you have difficulty walking, basically. Like that's the challenge of the day. Okay, I have to walk.
Well, I guess we kind of ran out of time a little bit because I'm sure many of you, if you haven't already, these gentlemen will be back upstairs signing in a few minutes once they get a chance to rehydrate and replenish. And I got 5 more minutes? Okay.
He's got a question right there. I want to hear.
Right there. Yes.
Addressing the potty situation. No, we actually tell people that are getting into motion capture, use the bathroom before you get in your suit because you get Velcroed in, and then everything is mathematically set. So all the computers know where all the dots are in your body, and if you take down the pants and you put them up again, and they're off a little bit, your model, let's say it's Godzilla, will now look like this. It starts like this, and now he's walking around like this. And because your pants are on the wrong way and the computer sees that your hips have turned 2 inches to the left. So it sounds ridiculous, but we try to get that out of the way before we get locked in, and then maybe again at lunch because they'll reset everything and they'll fix everything. And that's kind of that.
And I'll jump in with a practical version of that. I've had before where, because you're glued in, you'll, for sure, number 2's out of the question. You just gotta hold it. But number 1, I've had before where they will have glue ready, you remove the part, and I've had designated 2 fingers that they'll rip the fingers off. You can hold it and go number 1. Then they'll glue the fingers back on, keep rolling. Usually the makeup artist that works with you gets to know you very well.
We're storytellers.
I've never been
We can paint.
for peeing before.
Alan's a great storyteller. He can really paint a picture. It's really great. I think motion capture is, because it's a serious question about the bathroom. It really is, because motion capture you can go a lot easier, but because it's a lot of PJs, and then they get but in practical, like Ryuk would take 30 minutes to undo all. He's got a lot of bling and the belt and all this stuff. And so it's like, can I go to the bathroom? They're like, well, because we're going to, and then it's going to take 30 minutes to get, then you got to go, and it's going to take 10 minutes to get everything back. It's a 45-minute bathroom break to go to the bathroom real quick. So can you hold it? And it's like, well, I'm sweating profusely, so I'll just walk this line of not passing out and not like damaging. And literally, it's like, it's a constant battle of how long can I hold this?
And it's a fine
all
line.
day.
It's a fine line because, especially practical, the suits are so much hotter than like motion capture. Motion capture, you sweat because you're working out, but like being in the suits and glued in, your skin doesn't breathe, and so you need to stay hydrated, or else you will pass out. Especially with the strength you need to wear the heavy pieces or the suits, and so it's this fine line of stay hydrated because I don't want to pass out, versus I gotta hold it so don't drink too much. Yeah. It's a fine line to battle with that.
I've sweat so profusely wearing creature suits before that I sweat through like half-inch thick silicone rubber, which should be impossible because it's silicone rubber. But I had to like straddle somebody to choke them, and then when I got up, there was sweat all over their pants. Where I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I can't do anything about it. Sorry, like I'm sweating profusely, like literally 20 bottles of water. I didn't go to the bathroom all day. It was all sweat out.
You notice how he said he had to go to the bathroom, and then he sweat all over the actor. Sweat.
Sweat's no joke.
And to answer your question about Godzilla, the very first film that my father ever took me to was called Godzilla versus the Smog Monster. And I was a little kid, and it was a terrifying movie because a lot of people died every time the Smog Monster flew over everybody, so it was burnt into my memory. I was like, awesome. But it was amazing. Flash forward, getting to play Godzilla, I already knew Godzilla. I mean, I love Godzilla. He was always my favorite monster, hands down, always my favorite. And to get the opportunity to play it was awesome. So I already had all of that locked away. I didn't even have to watch it again. I could play it in my head with perfect clarity. But we built the new generation of Godzilla based on what had already been done, and I think it was the 5 actors before me who did so much to bring this amazing thing in suits to life. So to get to be the 6th Godzilla was freaking awesome. And along with the movement people, we started, my very first day, Godzilla started like this. And they're like, I don't think he has Tyrannosaurus Rex arms. I'm like, what kind of arms does he have? He's got shoulders. I'm like, Godzilla has shoulders? Like he wears a shirt? No, he's just shoulders though, and we'll do it like this. And I'm like, how's this? They're like, okay, let's try that. And we just built it a little piece at a time until everybody was happy with the movement. And then now we have what you see because of everybody who worked on it, including the animators. We do capture the motion during the shoot, but then animators go in and tweak everything a little bit further, a little bit more, or sometimes a lot more, and make us look spectacular. So it's a huge team effort between animators and production and direction and us.
And I just want to say one more thing about, we've been talking about all this stuff like, oh, it's very hot, it's very sweaty, it's very difficult. They literally have been the most physically taxing days of my life on some of these sets, but they're literally dreams come true. Like, I've wanted to play characters like this since I was a kid, and I never complain about like I'm very sweaty, I'm very hot. I'll apologize for like I just sweat all over this. I'm very sorry. Like there's drips, you know, but like I will tough it out and not go to the bathroom for a little bit or something for a movie that they're putting tons of money into, that they're trusting me to play a character for something I've dreamt of since I was a kid that people would kill to do. I don't want to be the guy like, oh, I can't wait till I go home. I need to talk to my agent and all this stuff, because there are so many people that would be there for free, that would pay to be there. And so I don't care if I'm sore, because whenever I heal up a few days later, I'm going to miss being on set. I wish, man, I can't wait till I can go sweaty and get in pain and wear heavy stuff. And I'm sure we're all like that. Like, sometimes we're like, oh, this sucks. And we have to remind ourselves we're living our dreams playing characters like this. And we're helping other kids and other people dream as well who are going to do this as they grow up.
It's funny, he said he apologized, or you say you're sorry for sweating sometimes. I apologize on set all the time because of getting bodily fluids on the other actors. Like, seriously, there is one film where this guy, I have him by the neck, and I'm supposed to rip his neck off, and I'm in full body prosthetic. He has a neck prosthetic, and I'm hiding it at first, and then I swipe, and it shoots out, and he falls and dies. But what the director wanted was he wanted my mouth full of blood, and he wanted me to go blah, and have it just spray everywhere. So sometimes on set, it's hurry up and wait. And they filled my mouth with a lot of blood. Then, for some reason, they waited 15 minutes, and that was just building more saliva. And I'm a trooper. I'm like him. I never complain. So I'm just like, holding it in. When they
can't swallow.
No.
You got.
So when they call action, and I'm like, this actor appropriately was screaming as you would. The blood didn't go anywhere but directly in his mouth. All of it. And it was more of my spit than blood. I apologized so much. But like, he's like, it was a great take, man. I get it. So sometimes they have it worse than us.
And on that note,
ladies
Sorry.
and gentlemen, if you would give it up one more time for Alan, JT, Jason, and Robert, coming soon to a destroyed city near you. So thank you, gentlemen.
thank you.
Okay, now who here learned something they didn't know an hour ago? Let's show some appreciation for that. Okay, now stick around, folks. The show is not over yet. This is the Big Apple Comic Con, not the Little Apple Comic Con.